Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 36 of the Rock and Roll Beer Guy podcast. This episode is brought to you by Phantom Carriage Brewery. It's a horror-themed brewery located in Carson, California. They make some really great beer, like the new Lugosi, which is a barrel-aged quad, and they have some tremendous food. Stop by there and tell the bartender that the podcast sent you, and you'll get 10% off your bill. This podcast is also brought to you by Gamefly. If you go to rockandrollbeerguy.com, you'll see a link there that'll get you a free 30-day trial. And that'll get you a video game mailed to your house from their selection of pretty much every single game that's available. In this episode, I talked to Alexis Van Ess Mincolla. He's the lead singer for the band 3TEETH. We talk about all sorts of stuff, including the government, the way human beings behave. We talk about his career. We talk about wrestling. We talk about video games. I had a really great time talking to him, and I hope you enjoy it. Cheers.
Hello, hello.
Hey, what's up, Alex? How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How you doing, bud?
Doing good, man. How do you say your last name? Is it Mincolla?
It's Mincolla. It's Italian, so you go with the hard L's on it instead of the soft ones. So Mincolla.
Cool. Yeah, I was going Latino with the two L's mean Y for some reason.
It happens in Southern California all too often, so it's cool.
Cool. Welcome, everyone, to the Rock and Roll Beer Guy podcast. I'm here with Alexis Van Ess Mincolla. Did I say it all right?
You did a phenomenal job. You even threw you threw some style on it. I like that.
And you are the singer, mastermind of 3TEETH. Can I call you mastermind?
Sure. I'll take it where I can get it. Yeah.
For those that are not familiar, I mean, you're an industrial band. You've brought back industrial, which I really appreciate, because it was kind of a big deal for me back in my youth, and hearing a new band that's pulling it off like you guys are doing it is awesome.
Thanks, man. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I mean, I'm not sure if we brought it back necessarily or resurrected it. I definitely, I feel like we may have brought back a certain portion of it we're missing, because I do think that industrial as a term is this sort of like very sprawling and like a concept of a genre, where it's like, well, what is even industrial is the great debate. So,
Sure.
I kind of I stick to what is industrial to me, and I don't claim to be some like industrial aficionado in terms of the history of industrial. But the shit that I grew up on is sort of the stuff that we're doing, and that's kind of why we're doing it, because it gets to the point where you're kind of like, well, I want to hear this type of stuff. Let's make it. So that's sort of what we did.
That's awesome. Yeah, bands like I would say Skinny Puppy and early 9 Inch Nails.
Absolutely, you got to have Ministry in there. They were
Ministry, yeah. KMFDM. I get a huge KMFDM vibe from what you guys are doing.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, especially stylistically too. That we sort of were inspired by.
Sure,
them,
yeah. I mean, you got the look down, dude. The leather jacket, the freaking mohawk, and the aviators. I mean, it's pimp. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah, I appreciate it, but thank you.
Yeah, no worries, dude. And I mean, you guys just recently toured with like some of the biggest bands in the world. You Tool and Rammstein, which is huge.
Yeah, we've been really fortunate to sort of, be, we were handpicked by Adam Jones of Tool to go out, which was like the most validating thing ever. And just like, a super crazy story in our band's sort of history where, I had met Adam at a wedding in Boston, like 3 years ago or something like that. And we ended up sort of staying like, I wouldn't even say friends as much as we were just sort of acquaintances that, we would talk every once in a while, and we both played video games together online, which over like a year, like we ended up building a really good rapport, and somehow like the collaboration of killing zombies really brings people together. So, we'd be nerding out with our headsets on, and like, it was almost a year later where one day he was like, yo, Lex, he was like, why didn't you tell me you had a band? And I was like, I don't know, dude, you're Adam from Tool. And I figured pretty much everyone's like, look at my fucking stupid band. And he's like, you're probably right. but it's awesome. I just saw a music video. It's so cool. I want to come out and check your next show, blah, blah, blah. And, I was like, oh, we're playing the Viper Room in like a month or something if you want to come out. And, I still thought he was just kind of like, whatever, pulling my leg or just sort of like being sort of casually nice or whatever. But turns out he comes out to the show and posts about it on the Tool Facebook page. The show sold out immediately, and, he's backstage and watched the show. And, I felt like it was like one of our worst shows for whatever reason. And he seemed to have absolutely loved it. And, he was like, oh, it'd be so cool to tour together. I thought you guys were so great live, so much energy, so much aggression. And, 2 months later, fast forward, my guy probably says that to every band. I like totally took it with a grain of salt. And, fast forward like 2 months later, we had played our last show of the year in Detroit on Halloween. And Tool had just played like Monster Mash Fest in Arizona. And, we were planning on getting a studio and writing our new album when Adam is like, hey, you want to go see The Martian or whatever the movie was? I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. And so I met him at the theater, and then like in the popcorn line, he turns to me, he's like, so, my band? And I'm like, yeah, dude, you're in Tool.
Yeah.
He always does shit like that. And I'm like, yeah, dude, I know your fan. He's like, we just played this festival, and I showed the rest of the guys your stuff, and they were really into it. And we're going out on tour in January with Primus, and we want you guys to open up. And I was like, I didn't even know what to say. I was like, he's like, well, I know it's really quick and you don't have much time because we had like literally 2 months to prepare for this, maybe less. And he was like, if you're just like too busy or like you can't come, it's fine. I understand. And I was like, dude, fucking course I got. Like, gave him a huge hug. And the lady was like, amazing. Do you want butter? She was like, do you want butter on your popcorn? I was like, shut the fuck up, lady. Like,
I want butter all over my body right now.
Seriously. And then I was like, and then we were like, he's like, but don't think about that. Let's go watch the movie. I'm like, all I want to do is call my fucking bandmates and like everyone
think
I know.
About that.
Yeah. And I gotta go watch, like, sit through 2 hours of Matt Damon growing fucking shit potatoes on Mars. And I was just like, couldn't pay attention at all. But, lo and behold, the next day I get a call from their manager being like, hey, mate, we're going to fucking hit the road in January. So get ready. And it's going to be quick and, just sort of live on the edge of your seat. Cause that band, like everything they do, it's like, just crazy last second, and like, I don't know, it's just funny at the highest levels of like how much, people don't even pass out the information until like a week before, and you're just like, oh my god.
And they always manage, and they still sell out. It's still a sellout show. Oh. So regardless,
I mean, they announce any sell out a show in fucking 10 minutes, and then like aftermarket ticket sales go for like 10 grand. It's insane. Yeah. So we went out and toured with them for like 40 shows or something like that.
That's nuts, man.
Playing arena. I felt like initially totally unprepared for, and by the time we finished, I was like, all I want to do is play arenas.
It's hard to go back to the clubs.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's something to be said for both, where it's like the arenas are sort of big and impersonal. Like I think it's easier to play an arena, to be totally honest.
Well, yeah, because you can tune out. You can zone out.
Yeah, you're so much more in your own headspace, and you're sort of like, you can't even see anyone. It's just like there's so much barricade between you and the crowd, and you're just looking out in this sort of like ocean of black, and you can kind of really get into your own headspace, which is awesome. But like Danny Carey told me on tour, he's like, man, but I fucking love the small clubs. You look out there, you can see everyone's eyes. You got to kill every motherfucker in the room. And I was like, very true, Dan. Very true. So like there is something that it will always be more intense in a small club. You know what I mean? Like,
for sure.
It's amazing. It's like, you know what it is? It's wrestling, for example. You go to Monday Night Raw. The wrestling isn't. It's like they're almost filming for. It's wrestling for a TV show. But then you go to PWG out in Reseda, and it's like the best, most intense, electrifying environment in the room, where the crowd becomes almost a participant as well. So I don't know. It's a totally different thing. They're both awesome.
Yeah.
But
no, yeah, I completely agree with you, and I like the comparison, the wrestling comparison, because for sure, I mean, the WWE is this big corporate monster, but I still watch it. I still care about the product.
And it's absolutely electrifying when you go and you see it in the big room and the production. It's all producing. But then at PWG, man, it's like you can't compare that to anything. The quality of that wrestling in those rings, and then the crowd participation, it's a whole different standard. It's awesome.
Yeah, because they always do those crazy suicide dives into the fucking crowd.
Yeah,
they don't care.
Like you're literally like if you aren't paying attention, you can get hurt.
Yeah, for sure. What so you've been watching wrestling for a while, I'm assuming. Did you watch it as a kid?
And it's funny because it kind of all ties into the Tool thing, where I grew up on wrestling. I was actually a state champion wrestler in high school. But was a huge pro wrestling fan growing up as well. I mean, I had the fucking wrestling buddies as a little kid. I had like all the figures. I was during the Attitude Era, I was a huge wrestling fan. But then, there was a period where the product sort of slipped for me a little bit. I wasn't really into it. And, just a lot of other things started happening in my life. So I just kind of, lost focus on it, didn't care about it. But then Adam from Tool rekindled for me on that tour. And then he was the one who kind of got me into PWG, and he's like, you got to come check this out. And he picked me up a ticket and, sort of like rekindled it in my life, which I kind of thank him for, because, man, that's like wrestling right now is as exciting as ever.
For sure. I mean, I'm kind of on the same timeline with you. I watched all the way up through the Attitude Era, and pretty much shortly after like Stone Cold quit, that's when I kind of gave up. I wasn't really around for the John Cena and the CM Punk.
It's so weird because Adam will always tell me CM Punk's his favorite wrestler, and I just never got that. Like, it still doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I've gone back and watched some of the, I got the network, so I watched some of the older pay-per-views, but I'm just like, he's all right.
I don't know. It's just like, it's not Stone Cold, it's not The Rock. It's not, there's elements of the, like, I just love the larger than life characters, and I felt like there was something sort of really humble about CM Punk in a weird way that was sort of like, I don't know. It's like a indie sort of DIY band versus like a Rammstein. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, I like Rammstein. I want to see fucking flames shooting up. I want the Undertaker.
Yeah, hell yeah, dude. Hell yeah. That's something that I felt was missing for a while. And I mean, now with like Finn Balor, I think he's kind of one of those characters.
Definitely.
When he does the Demon King thing, I'm like, all right, that's cool. And I'm pretty cool. I'm interested in his match coming up with Bray Wyatt. That apparently Bray is going to turn into something else. He's going to turn into Sister Abigail or whatever.
Yeah, dude. It's like
it's going to be. I like that. I like the characters.
Totally, man. The Ultimate Warrior was my favorite wrestler growing up, and I didn't even know what that guy was or what he was talking about, but he was like so fucking captivating. And I'm like, I didn't even get it. I was like, what is this guy supposed to be?
He's running around.
Just like
grabbing the ropes.
Insane. Totally, just on this fucking sprawling, insane. I think it was like a combination between LSD and steroids or whatever was going on there, because it was fascinating. Yeah.
Well, I read a lot of stories that they used to do a lot of coke with Vince.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure.
Like him and Macho Man, and we're always doing blow with.
You look at Macho Man during a promo, and it looks like his fucking head's gonna explode. You know what I mean? Just like fucking the best. Dude.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't have that anymore, man. Few guys have the promo skills to really captivate me right now with what they're putting out. And that's why I've been kind of leaning over towards, New Japan Pro Wrestling a little bit more, and, getting into the Bullet Club stuff. And, now I'm going to PCW tomorrow to check that out. Sandman's going to be there. I was like, what?
That'll be cool. You've been to that one, right?
I've never been. I'm actually, because I'm from Florida, and I've only been here for about a year and a half, and I don't have any wrestling buddies, and now this year I'm starting to get new wrestling buddies. Like my buddy Mark is a band manager. He manages Tombs and 1349, a couple other guys. And he bought me the ticket. He's like, "You're coming with us. You get a free taco." I'm like,
It's so funny how like married the metal culture and the wrestling culture is.
Yeah. It is.
We were just on tour with Danzig, and it isn't full tour; it's just a run of shows. But last night he brought us on the tour bus, and we're hanging out with his head bodyguard, Big Dave, who I'd actually initially first met backstage at Monday Night Raw. He had got Danzig back into wrestling, so there we were backstage talking, like, because it was just after No Mercy too, and we're sitting there cracking beers, talking about pro wrestling. It's like everyone in metal, and then the whole crossover with Code Orange. I thought that was awesome,
Dude, yes, the NXT takeover with Code Orange was great.
Yeah.
They really did a good job with Aleister Black's character. Yeah,
so sick, dude, so sick. I'm totally trying to make something like that happen. Adam, because he's actually really tight with Triple H and Stephanie, and I was there, and he like gave him the CD, and Triple H's assistant Terry hit me up too, and he's all like, "Dude," he's like, "We're gonna try and place this with NXT." So I just been sitting here hoping and praying, because that would be such a dream.
That's so sick. Yeah,
that would be it. That would be the dream. Like, I would just be like, cool, I could die tomorrow, and I'm good.
Yeah. Going back a little bit, I wanted to say, I met Adam Jones at a convention, and dude, guy was just one of the nicest guys ever. He was hanging out with.
He really is, man.
Yeah, he was hanging with Chet Zar there, and I got to meet them both, talk to them for a while. I had Chet on the show.
That's so weird. I was there with him. There's that Monster Palooza.
Yeah. No, I saw you there. I saw you walking by. It was such a crowd. I was like, I'm not gonna chase after him right now.
Yeah, no, man. Adam is like just salt of the earth, one of the nicest human beings. So humble, so gracious, and really just giving and caring. He's like, because he's also dad mode. He's got 2 kids now, and him and his wife Corinne. They're just like just some of the most special people in my life. Like whenever I have a question about anything, it's like I call Adam, and he's got this sort of sage wisdom. I was just like, the dude is literally turning into a wizard because he's insanely brilliant, insanely talented, understands how to navigate a very complicated industry as good as anyone too. Like the dude, like Tool is a band that has really preserved the longevity and their integrity better than anyone into their 50s, which is just like it's such like you don't see a lot of things aging gracefully in rock and roll. It's just really difficult, and I think that those guys did an amazing job of that. And I think that part of that is taking the time to release the record. It's not like they've just sort of been chasing something or chasing relevancy like I think a lot of older acts do, where it's like, and they slip up and put out a dubstep metal album. You know what I mean? And it's I thought kids like that. And then like, then you got to have that in your catalog forever. So it's like,
Jesus.
Yeah, Tool's done such an awesome job. And I'm really lucky to have Adam as sort of like a mentor in my life right now. He's the best.
That's cool, man. Yeah. He, when I met him, I was like, dude, I hate to do this, but I kind of need to get a picture with you because no one's going to believe me that I met you here at this convention.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, actually,
he's so like that too.
Yeah,
he just strolls around in places, and you're like, dude, like you can't do that. You're gonna get fucking mobbed.
Yeah, exactly. And he actually he was like, I want to take a picture with you holding up that fucking Hellraiser. I just got an autograph from Doug, and I was like, yeah, totally.
Well, Adam used to work in visual effects too, right?
Yeah. I mean, I know that's why he hangs out there, and he's probably catching up with some of his
that's his
workers and. Yeah.
I mean, he was working on like Terminator 2, like as like Tool got signed. Like he was like, he worked on I think he worked on even as far back as Ghostbusters, but also Jurassic Park. I mean, the dude's an artistic genius in many ways.
Yeah. And I also wanted to go back a little bit more and talk to you about that moment. You said the first show he went to that you thought it was your worst show ever. Like that's a common thing that musicians, you become a perfectionist, and then there's that added pressure. You're like, oh shit, that dude's back there. You know what I mean? Even if it's a friend, totally. You know what I mean? Like,
and the complications were like, it's just little things like, I just felt like there was like too much mic feedback. But again, it's like you're playing a small club, and it's like, Adam is one of those people that understand the trajectory of a project where it's like, yeah, dude, like they played small clubs, or it's like you deal with the same type of shit. And it's like, eventually you have an amazing road crew that makes sure that never happens. So it's like, he gets it. So like, it was like my little freak out was sort of like just a casual, like, yeah, dude, it's a drop in the bucket. Shit happens.
Yeah, exactly. And I wanted to talk to you about the band, dude. Like I wanted to ask you if you get crowds that kind of, because you guys teeter on that line of rebellion and, standing up and protest and, against the government because we fucking should. But that's kind of what attracted me to bands like Atari Teenage Riot and shit like that. And, you guys have that going on. Have you ever had any situations where the audience kind of just fucking goes crazy or like tries to start a mob or something?
Going back to this idea of what is industrial music or what was industrial music to me, industrial music to me was sort of like a transgressive category of music where, maybe Ministry didn't sound as heavy as like Sepultura that I was listening at the time, but there was so much message in it that was so seething with like this like anger that in many ways it felt like industrial music was like sucking the poison out of the mass production society and spitting it back in its face. And I think that dangerous to me. Like the idea of like going to a really crazy industrial concert like you're talking about, there was an element that it felt unsafe, or even going to a Rage Against the Machine concert. Like I remember saw like Rage 3 times when I was younger, and like the last song everyone like jumped over the fence, and like I remember being like, dude, like there was an element of music in the 90s that felt dangerous. And then it seemed to have just disappeared in many ways. And I felt like that's something that I did want to return to a little bit. Like I wanted music to kind of feel a little bit dangerous again. And my background is, I have 2 degrees in political science. So for me, like I'm very passionate about the things that we sing about, and I try and not make it too political, but rather sort of humanistic, where I sort of, it's things that you don't have to understand politics, but you should understand humanity, and how oftentimes, we're sort of, placating or sort of letting the whole fucking machine roll over us. So yeah,
we're being oppressed and we're not even aware of it.
Yeah, and it's like psychic oppression. So I think we deal with a lot of elements like that. I try and avoid too much of the politics, especially because this day and age, people are going to try and pin you to one side or the other. Oh, you guys are fucking leftist, fucking liberal, fucking snowflakes. I'm like, really? Because like I just want to bring a fucking gun to my gay friend's wedding and shoot it off in the air when he gets married. You know what I mean? Like it's not like I can get pinned to one side or the other. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's a huge problem with today's politics, where it's like, you can't like my anarchistic tendencies come across to conservatives like liberalism, and it's like it has nothing to do with liberalism. But anyways, I digress. But we have had some crazy shit at our shows. I mean, even our last show in San Francisco, someone got completely naked in the mosh pit. Like I was like,
nice.
I was like, this dude went full balls out in the mosh pit, and like no one did anything about it. I'm like, I think I can kick that guy out of here. It was like so crowded in the venue too that like there was like people couldn't even leave. It was like total fire hazard. The whole stairwell was filled up from people watching, but. It was awesome. It was great. I love that shit. It was such a small stage too. I think Chase got wasted and fell into the drum kit. It was a fun one, but that's the shit that you love. It's like that's when I would go to shows. I remember like I got kicked in the ribs and I was a little kid, and I remember thinking that was so cool because I was like, I went home and I'm like, Mom's like, what happened? I'm like, I got kicked in the ribs. And it's like, little shit like that. It's like. You got to have some sort of outlet for that. And I think that's what's really cool about going to shows. It's like a self-contained little universe of like what you did at a metal show. If you did that in the rest of society, you'd be arrested. It's like, but it's a place to sort of contain that aggression and a place to release it and a place to sort of do it with a sense of camaraderie. You get knocked down in a mosh pit, people should be helping you back up to knock you down again. But it's like, that's just all part of it. It's sort of it's a very unique situation that unless you've sort of been there and understand it, it's going to be very foreign to you.
Yeah, I mean, the world is a different place right now, and not getting into politics, just thinking of like what you're talking about right now, just we've become so sensitive in a lot of ways, but then if I say that, then people are like, hey, you're being insensitive, and you're like, it's like, I'm not on either. I just want to be able to go mosh with someone and not have them get upset at a concert. Totally. You know what I mean? Like if I'm pushing you at a show, don't turn around and look at me and be like, hey, stop. Like, no, I'm going to fucking, come on, move with me.
Yeah.
What happened? What happened?
I think these are sort of just general growing pains of us sort of being on the precipice of like a new wave of existence. I was having this conversation without getting too philosophical yesterday, where it was sort of like understanding like, so when books first got introduced on a mass scale, it was during the Age of Enlightenment in Europe, when books were flying off the press. And at that point, no one had ever had that much access to information, and it changed the world drastically. It sort of like spawned these new public spaces, like salons and sort of social environments, where very fervent debates would happen, where it would get to the point where, there was public executions, and eventually it led to the French Revolution, which the same ideas that were born out of those books also led towards American independence, which is like, if you think about it, here we are in the real second wave of the information age. Because if you want to look at the Enlightenment as the first information age, and now we're going through a whole new version of that, where it's like, we're sort of in that crazy, fervent debate, public execution stage in many weird ways. And who knows what's going to be born out of it. But I do know that most evolution is marked by the precursor of heavy turmoil. And right now, it feels like it. You can feel like we're right in the mix of like, something's got to give. It can't just stay like this all the time. And, we'll see where it goes.
Yeah. No, I hear you completely, man. And it's, it's fascinating to me to think about the fact that a lot of humans are being born in a world now that you don't need to learn anything, really. You know what I mean? Like, you look it up on YouTube. Hey, how do you tie a tie? Just look it up on YouTube. Hey, what's the...
But I mean, isn't that learning, though? There's an element to that that's learning. I just think that we live in this sort of like hyper reality where I think it's becoming harder to discern what is real and what isn't real. And then I'm not trying to break up the whole debate of absolutism versus relativism, but the idea that, people are just learning that we're going to have to reframe our perception to understanding what is real and what isn't real, because it's very easy to sell everything as real now. Perception management is something that we've gotten so good at as the people who purvey information, whether it be, the media or even, there's perception management programs in the CIA. That's what they call it. It's been there for ages. Where it's like, well, we have to manage the perception here. And it's like, we've gotten so good at doing that. We've gotten so good at being able to spin things that, I think the first stage is going to have to come as a huge wave of distrust, which I think we've seen recently in this Las Vegas attack, where everyone's immediately just distrusting the mainstream narrative entirely. Whether or not it's true or not, but it's like the reality is no one trusts anything more, which is an interesting phenomenon. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
It wasn't until the wake of 9/11 that a lot of people sort of became these sort of like 9/11 truthers and stuff like that. And I don't want to dive too much into that. But now we've sort of gotten to this new wave where, like, I think the public distrust of the government is at an all-time high. Like, you can read the statistics on that. It's insane. So it's like everyone's sort of trying to figure out what is real and what isn't real. And I think that we're sort of reevaluating the concept of fact, which I think is really interesting for human consciousness. Because at that point, you're sort of questioning reality. And I think that that's when you start to get into this sort of collective relativism that might actually be good for us. Right now, it's not. It's really difficult for everyone to wrap their heads around it. But eventually, you know, for everyone to try and discern on a greater level of what is real and what isn't real might not be a bad thing. So I'm always trying to find some weird silver lining and shit, you know, like stay aggressively optimist, you know.
Yeah, you can't fall into the negativity because there is a lot of it already, and it can be very easy to fall into it. You know,
it's fucking insane.
Yeah, you have nights where you read up, you just check your Facebook, and by the end of the night, I want to fucking kill myself because it's like, what is this? What is happening? Why you guys?
Totally.
You gotta,
and no one
stop.
can agree on anything anymore. It's like everyone's just turned into this contrarian that is so like self-infatuated with like putting their own opinion out there that is like half the time just some like weird regurgitated opinion. Which, you know, for me, one of the things I love going to read both sides of the story and just like embedding myself. I'll read fucking alt-right politics just to understand where these people are coming from. Because I think you have to do that now. I think you have to kind of create this sort of holistic audit of understanding a situation. Because everything is like a billion shades of gray more than ever now. So if you want to have any sort of educated opinion, you better fucking watch both sides and you better fucking learn everything you can. And that's what I think, you know, is going to be the next stage after what is right now like this sort of don't trust anything, don't believe in anything, and everyone fighting at each other's throats. I think you're going to actually get to a level of discourse where everyone's going to be able to sort of return to an actual discussion and learn from both sides. That's sort of my hope, because I don't think that no one's even having a discussion anymore. It's just fucking shit throwing. It's just fucking dick wagging and shit throwing. It's all anyone's doing right now. Largely because, I mean, the fish rots from the head. Look what our fucking president does. You know, it's like that guy's not. He's not having educated discourse about you know, hot button topics. There's at this point it's just shit throwing with other fucking political leaders and NFL fucking players. It's just insane. So you know,
Twitter wars,
I think that
Twitter wars.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, the pendulum always swings both ways. Where it's like, you know, the large reason we have this is because, you know, we had a black president for 8 years. Which, can you imagine how much that freaked out a lot of this country? A lot of the middle of this country. And where there's power, there's resistance. So at that point, you're getting this huge underground of resistance, which is an intense amount of racial tension that was still there. So the pendulum swung back super hard. And look what we had before Barack Obama. We had fucking 8 years of George Bush. So the pendulum swung that way. It's just been doing that for as long as I can remember. So I think we'll get a big swing back in the other direction, hopefully, you know, in 4 years and not 8. So we'll see.
Yeah. And I mean, there is a deeper layer of understanding that I look at. When I look at these things, I think about it, and like you were saying, not to get too philosophical, but it's balance is really the way that things work here in this universe, or whatever you want to call it, frequency, or wherever the fuck we're living. It's all about balance. You know, that's how you achieve enlightenment or, you know, next level ascension, whatever you want. You have to be right in the middle. You need to have a little bit of both sides, and you need to inform yourself of both sides so you have the power to balance it out. You know, otherwise you're swinging on one side of the pendulum or the other, like you were saying.
And I think that it's important that both sides are there, to be honest. And that's something that I've talked about a lot, is this sort of sacred tension where you can sit down, you know, you got a girlfriend or a wife or this, whatever. It's like there's always going to be this tension between even just men and women. And it's sacred. And it's the same thing with every two polarizing opposites, whether it be the yin and the yang, or whether it be the fucking sun and the moon. And that tension will always be the most important thing of our existence. Why? Because without that tension, and much like a guitar string, if you don't have the right tension, you can't even play the right note. Tension is important. You need that. It's going to always be there, and you have to respect it. And it's like, you know, we're not ever going to live in total peace and harmony. It's just like, it's never going to happen. But the pendulum will swing between both sides, and you will have moments like peaks and valleys, like wave theories, where moments that shit's good, then shit's going to get crazy, then it's going to get good, then it's going to get crazy. You're going to have in-between moments, and that's just the reality. So, you know, you sort of just have to get very zen about it and roll with the punches, you know?
For sure. I mean, I try explaining that to a lot of my family, and, you know, because I have older generation, like Latino family, that are very they're the way they think is very specific, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of them actually think, you know, mostly conservative or Republican-ish or whatever. But to try to explain that to them, to try to explain that there's a balance, that like it can't all be one side or the other.
And I think it's particularly more difficult to, you know, with very sort of traditional minds and older minds to sort of get into sort of concepts of metaphysics. It's like, you know, I think that's where, you know, the younger generation is going to be more equipped and their minds are going to be more limber in the next, you know, I think the next 25 years is, you think about how much has happened in the past 5 years?
Yeah, and it's happening faster and faster. And
Yeah,
I feel
the
that
singularity is
right now,
fucking ramping up.
Yeah, the singularity is coming. We're getting. I mean, you see Elon Musk already talking about the connecting your brain to the internet and shit. Like, I don't know how I feel about that. Like, I'm kind of okay with it, I guess.
I think you have to be okay with it because it's going to happen regardless. So it's like the people who are fighting, the people who are saying the sort of Luddites, or even the people that just strictly don't know about it. I think in the next 25 years, only the most limber minds are really going to be able to thrive and survive. Otherwise, people are going to get fucking left in the dust.
Yeah. You're
going to see a lot more. I mean, half the reason Middle America is uprising like crazy right now is because they're so fucking disenfranchised. You know, it's like there's no education. Like, we tour a lot, so I get to see a lot of this country. And I mean, really get to see it, you know, put your finger on the pulse of it. Obviously, one thing I will say is despite where you are, you're going to find cool people in every part of the world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're going to have people that, like, especially us, they come out to our shows, we can relate to them. They're people that, you know, might be sort of disaffected from the environment that they're in. And they're sort of, but a large portion of this country is just completely disenfranchised and poor, and no one gives a shit about them. The fact that somehow they are relating to the guy with the gold elevator, I don't fucking get. But, you know, it's an interesting time. You know?
It's the dream. It's the I want to be that rich dream. You know, I'm so poor, I want to be that rich.
Yeah. And he's relatable because he fucking, you know, he doesn't speak good.
I don't speak good. I do. It's honestly though, man. Like, I'm not as eloquent as I would want to be. But I'm a victim of just circumstance, of the way I grew up and the scenarios that I was in. But I got myself out of it when I became a conscious human, which I would say was when I was about 20, because before that I was just trying to fuck. That was all it was.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm in school,
just running that low vibration. It's funny because I mean, yeah, we were all there, and there's something still beautiful. I think it's as important to be mindless as it is mindful at times. You know, it's talking about that balance. But yeah, you know, it's like, I think that circumstantially, a lot of us are born into environmental situations that oftentimes dictate our existence. But, you know, I do believe that there's sort of autonomy of the human mind that can rise above that, and you can own everything. Like, your state of sovereignty, you are the monarch of your own skin. You can forever, no matter what situation you're in, you can pull yourself out of it and put yourself in whatever thing you want to be. Obviously, it takes harder work for some people, depending on the situation, and some people might have advantages. But the reality is, you got to believe that, you know.
Yeah, no, and it's completely true, man. I mean, me, for example, I'm nowhere near, like, I'm not on tour with Tool, but I'll tell you, you know, there was points in my life where I was nothing and homeless and absolutely just a garbage human, and then pulled myself out of that to, you know, get my shit together. And like, now I'm living in, like, I wanted to live in Los Angeles my whole life, and now I'm here, and I have a good job, and I have the podcast, and I have, you know, the music and the band thing going. And
that just requires a certain amount of fearlessness too, because I feel like a lot of people, there's always one thing holding most people back, and I hate to say it, but it's usually another person. Whether it be a father or mother or a girlfriend or a boyfriend. It's like, I feel like sometimes in a lot of people's lives, I can't because of this, I can't because of that. And it's like, if you can break free of that and fucking have that sort of like that Promethean moment and fucking pull it off, to like take that risk. Like you said, like, I always wanted to move to California. That's not an easy thing. I did the same thing, and I didn't have fucking a pot to piss in when I fucking did it. And, you know, it's like, you can pull it off if you want to, and you're going to go through some fucking times where you're eating fucking cans of tuna and crackers every night. But the reality is, if you really want it bad enough, you can get it, you know?
Sure. Yeah, it's never going to be easy. Just do it and work on it, and eventually the payoff will be there. You know, there is a certain amount of time of work that needs to go into it.
Well, and it's risk and reward shit too, where it's like, if you take that big fucking risk and you fucking just fucking aim for the fucking stars and you land on the moon, you know, it happens, you know.
Yeah,
it's all possible.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, one of the funny things with like getting to meet some of the people that I really looked up to, especially in the music industry, And you realize that everyone's just a fucking another dude. Do you know what I mean? Like, you get them in that one-on-one time, and just like, they're all the same. They all start off in the same circumstance, where they were just like some fucking guy who is chasing something. You know, now they just have more money and more people who look up to him. But at the core, they're all just the same person. Like Till Lindemann, for example, that guy is like, you know, you look at that guy and he's a larger than life fucking like pro wrestling or a rock star.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he's just the nicest, most humble guy in the world, you know? So it's like, you know, everyone's just sort of like that. And everyone also still has no fucking clue what they're doing. That's the other thing I take a lot of comfort in. At the highest levels. And I think it's become more and more evident when you realize that our president clearly has no idea what he's doing. But at every level of every single thing.
Yeah.
No one really knows what they're doing. They're just fucking winging it, you know? And it's like, and I think there's something beautiful in that, where it's like, most people are like, well, yeah, I can't do that. I've never done that before. And it's like, I was never the fucking lead singer of a band. It was my first band. And I decided I wanted to do it. And, you know, it's like, it somehow pulled it off. But like,
yeah, man. So
you got to jump off the cliff and build your fucking wings on the way down, you know?
For sure. You know, it's funny, Till, my girl's a big fan of Rammstein. And I told her one day, I was like, you know, I'm one of those typical, like, I grew up very alpha Cuban, like very machista, you know, like, there's nothing. Yeah. I'm the man.
Totally.
He is. I told her, I'm like, that's the only man that I've ever seen that I'm kind of intimidated by.
Dude, and I'm the same way. I'm like super, like, I'm a big guy. I'm like fucking 6'3", 200 something pounds, big old mustache, and like Till Lindemann, I feel like a little kid around. Like the guy is just like, I remember like me, I'm like, dude, you're pretty much my dad. Like I feel like I just look up to him in so many ways. You know, it's so funny. But yeah, Till is the prototypical fucking alpha male with the fucking, he's the fucking fire god. You know, that guy's crazy. He's awesome.
Hell yeah. Hey, let me get a little weird and mythical right now.
Do it up.
With you. So one of the reasons I actually added you on Facebook many years, actually added you before the band came out. And it was because you had a bunch of pictures of like crazy Egyptian shit. And I've always had a fascination with that until I finally like had an experience that gave me enough information for me to stop searching, basically. Yeah. So I had a very bad car accident at one point in my life. I've talked about this a bunch of times, but I had it's not a near-death experience. I died. So
crazy.
According to the hospital records and stuff like that. So, I, out of that accident, I, blacked out. There was a moment in time that I lost where I believe my consciousness left my body behind. And I saw a lot of crazy Egyptian shit and a lot of sacred geometry shit.
Interesting.
And at the time, I had no idea what any of that was. I saw it, and I'm like, what the fuck? And I immediately started, as soon as I was able to start drawing again, because I lost my, I couldn't move my hands and arms and shit for a while.
Yeah.
I started drawing the seed of life and started trying to draw shit that I saw. And then I started going on this crazy spiritual journey where just traveling to different countries and talking to fucking gurus and like yogis and taking LSD and taking ayahuasca and taking all these psychedelics to try and figure out what the fuck,
Yeah.
And it all, like, I talked to this lady once, told me that she was I forget what they call it, but she could see my past lives or whatever. And what are they called? I don't know what
I find this stuff all fascinating, dude. I mean, yeah, sorry, continue.
No, it's cool. So yeah, I don't know what they call the lady that can see your past lives, but she out of nowhere with no context just said, you used to be, you're connected to the Egyptians. And I'm like, what?
Interesting.
But I'm Cuban. That makes no sense. But I did all of that shit, and it all led to this.
When she told, did she do a past life regression? Like, was it like hypnosis based? Like, was she basically like, did she just look at you and start to tell you your past lives? I'm just curious.
Well, she looked at my hands and like held my hands for a while and like closed her eyes and did some stuff, and I didn't tell her anything. I just stood there, and she was actually she was related to my friend's girlfriend at the time, so like we were just all hanging out, and she just one day she's like, give me your hands and blah blah blah. And she told me all that, and she told me that, I've always had this ability to read people's past lives, and, I've never done anything with it, but, I mean, I just feel it. I'm like, okay, whatever, that's cool. I didn't think anything of it. And then one day, this was post ayahuasca, and, like, I was still fucking around with mushrooms, and I had this vision where I was in a cave and some lady with a cat face, and I was like immediate Egyptian. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I've seen that in Egypt, you know, and it was a girl with a cat face, and she gave me this orb and a bag of coins and all this shit, and I walk outside, and it's like, it's a giant desert with giant pyramids, and there were actual giants there, and a bunch of regular sized people as well, but people with animal heads, all very Egyptian, and they were invisible, like in the distance. I'm sorry, I don't know how I'm trying to explain this.
No, I mean it's not an easy thing to explain.
So in the distance, I could see New York, like we were in the ocean facing New York.
Yeah.
Right, and it was like an isolated island, and there was like a bubble around it, and they didn't tell me, but they made me understand that we were invisible to them, like New York couldn't see us right now,
like a parallel universe type of thing, where it was like coexisting in the same space, but you sort of couldn't see it unless you were transdimensional.
Right. So they're all transdimensional Egyptian beings that were, there was a small group of them that was actually worshiping war. There was like tanks and like soldier stuff. Like it was all in like a museum type of deal, but they were absorbing the violent nature of this stuff and using that as energy to live, which was really weird to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty fucking. For one, sounds pretty fucking awesome. For two, it's like, when you're dealing with sort of the Egyptian pantheon of gods, you're dealing sort of with, you're tracing with sort of like monomythic characters, where these archetypes of these gods can be carried into every other pantheon of gods, whether it be Roman or Assyrian or Sumerian. It's like all these guys are all connected, and each of these deities represents a facet of human consciousness, whether it be, say, someone like Ares connected to Set, or whether it be Mercury connected to Thoth, or whether it be, Bastet and whatever her connection is, like you said, the cat head. But, the idea that there is these sort of oversouls connected to, say, something like war or even masculinity. You're dealing with these sort of elements of human consciousness that are very present in our culture, and that's, in a weird way, there's something about, because you're talking like pagan or polytheistic cultures, or there's so much more holism in that. Because like in the same way that you don't wake up and feel the same way every day, the idea that you should have one God is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
It's like there's this sort of myriad of gods for different feelings and different emotions and whatever is sort of fitting your sort of psychological agenda at the time. But yeah, I mean, that seems super heavy. And the idea that if there was ever a war god present, it's now, and for the past fucking 100 years and maybe forever. It's like, I watched that stupid Wonder Woman movie last night, which is funny because, they're in World War I and she's trying to go kill Ares because he's sort of kept the world at war, which, it's strangely similar. Yeah, no, it makes total sense to me, but it's
well, it makes sense in what we're talking about right now. But I'm saying, wasn't that like World War I was kind of the beginning of that war, and like then World War II came around. Like, I don't know, it just seems like
it was, but there were so many wars before. I mean, you're talking about the human nature of man has perpetually been at war.
Yeah, that's true. It's like, whether it been, leading up into World War I, you had, you could trace back to fucking Alexander the Great. You could go back. Mm-hmm. That territory has been at battle as long as there's been man. But yeah, it's like. What do you think about the theory that's out there that this whole war that we have in the Middle East it's got something to do with Egypt and like the center point of creation of humanity? Like that's like a sub theory that people have. There's a book
called Cyclonopedia. You should check it out. It's really, really interesting. It's a piece of theory fiction written by an Iranian author who's sort of being heralded as like a modern day Lovecraft in many ways. The theory fiction sort of being that yes, this is a piece of fiction and you should read it like one, but there's theory embedded in the fiction. And it sort of gives this sort of context that like the oil is and under the earth is this sort of like sentient Tellurian being that, transfixes and sort of mutates. And, in many ways, to get weird on you, it's like, here we are, the linchpin of our existence is us extracting dead, decaying matter out of the earth and essentially refining it in this sort of alchemical process into what is how we stay alive through oil and through plastics and all these things where it's like, if that's not death magic, I don't know what is. So the idea that we've sort of, energetically perversed an aspect of humanity by virtue of still being tethered to this essentially death magic is yeah. I mean, there's undercurrents to that stuff in our long-term geopolitical strategies that we've had in the Middle East. Because you can't say that oil isn't a factor, if not the factor. So, that's the Fertile Crescent. That's the land of, what is that fucking dinosaur matter? What the fuck is even oil? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, oh yeah, that's fucking, fossil fuels. Like, it's just crazy. It's like we put so little thought to that shit, right. Yeah. Which is funny because I was sort of beginning to write this sort of graphic novel on doing the same thing with blue cobalt. So apparently a large reason that we're still over in these parts is, blue cobalt is something that we extract from the earth as well that is pretty much running our cell phone batteries, our vape batteries, the fucking hoverboard fucking battery things or whatever, laptop batteries. Mm-hmm. It's a huge ingredient in that shit. So remember when they started exploding and people's like fucking said the Samsung 7s were exploding and people's vape pens were exploding and people's fucking stupid hoverboard things were exploding.
Yeah.
I started to kind of develop my own theory fiction on how, there's these sort of like ancient Islamic demons called jinns or ifrits or a particular type that are sort of like fire genies, demonic fire genies that one was trapped in the cobalt that they were extracting from the Middle East to basically pump into our fucking cell phones or vape pens and our hoverboards that was essentially fighting back and causing them to explode. Obviously, this is nonsense, but it makes for a really fun sort of little graphic novel piece that I was starting to write out.
That's pretty awesome. I would read that shit. I mean, to be honest, at the point that I am in my life, I'm treating a lot of the things that I hear as possibilities. So, like what you just said, yes, it's nonsense here. Yeah. But I totally believe that exists in some dimension.
I mean, dude, fact is
parallel dimension.
Fact has become so much stranger than fiction at this point that the idea that somehow, you shouldn't leave everything open for possibility is like, you got to be comfortable with the question marks in life. You know what I mean? It's like,
sure.
Who knows? Everything could be. You have to approach every task with the curiosity of a child.
Yeah. There are two things that I think are truths here, and it's the question mark and death.
Yes, exactly.
And that's it.
And they go well together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they go really well together because that's a lot of people don't understand what happens after death.
Yeah, which is interesting. To go back to Egypt, so Egypt is a culture. They devoted their greatest thinkers of their time to understanding death. Which, what do we devote our greatest thinkers to? Developing fucking cell phone apps and cell phones and new tech. It's like we're sort of living so much on this plane that, in many ways we've sort of constricted ourselves with sort of capitalistic idealism. I'm not coming across as some anti-capitalist now, but, the idea that, an amazing thinker could somehow be at the Temple of Hathor, and sort of attempting to understand death, like generations and generations and generations devoted to understanding that, which we don't do any of that. It's like, I don't think there's a whole lot of research done scientifically about that. We just sort of accept it for what it is.
Yeah, I think it should be part of our everyday learning. Like in schools, they should be teaching people this. Like there should be no reason why the first time I
should learn about death and taxes.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. Like there's no reason why when I told my mother for the first time that I was going to die, I talked about this in the last episode. She was like, she freaked out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, it's truth, though. Like, that's the only thing I can tell you for sure is that eventually I'm not going to be here anymore.
But 100% of people die.
100%. There's no reason for people to be like, no way, why would you say that? Or freak out about it. Instead, learn about it. Why don't you learn about what happens,
Which leads me to sort of this next topic of tethering it into the sort of energetic existence. We're still operating primarily off explosion energy, combustion energy, extracting fossil fuels, operating cars by making little tiny explosions in that car to make pistons move, to make a drivetrain and wheels go.
Yeah.
Where we've sort of become energetic failures of an existence. We're still operating off the same technology of the past 100 years. The cars are the same fucking cars that Henry Ford created, aside from they just do a little bit more, but they're the same primary thing operating the same primary way. But we haven't advanced energetically as a race. And I think this is something that we're going to have to really understand. We're sort of trapped in these Newtonian physics where we're still living in a material cellular level. But at the end of the day, within those cells, you have atoms, and those atoms are charged, and we're operating in an advanced vibrational state where it's like we have to start understanding things on an energetic level, that we are energetic beings, that the idea, it's like we gave Einstein, the Nobel Prize for the theory of relativity, that energy and matter are interconvertible, and matter is just energy condensed. But yet somehow we're still living in this sort of like, especially in our medical system, in this sort of like very Newtonian cellular level, that we're made of tissues and organs and cells, and we have to operate like that. And we don't give any fucking understanding to the idea that we are energetic creatures, and that when we die, that energy doesn't die just because the energy and matter are interconvertible. What happens with that? And that's where you can sort of get into your past life theories. That's where you can get into the fact that we're not existing at our highest potential. It's like I think the fact that we're only using 10% of our brain's capacity is pretty much evidence that we're not humaning right, and we need to start figuring some shit out.
For sure, man. It's a vehicle, and I try to tell that to everyone. Like, think about it like, imagine you're in a car, right? Your car takes you places. You drive on the highway. You can get across the land.
Yeah.
But it doesn't fly.
Yeah.
It doesn't fucking go underwater and shit like that. Like, that is how our body is. Like, we're operating very limited to what our potential is. Like, of course we want to fly, and the fact that we can think about that's even a thought, like flying. That means we have that potential. We're just not doing it.
Well, imagine if we devoted our greatest thinkers of our time towards understanding bioenergetics. What if people like Tesla and people like Wilhelm Reich still existed? Not to sound like a pompous asshole, but I feel like we don't have any good scientists anymore. I feel like, Neil deGrasse Tyson, he's kind of cool. Whatever.
He's a celebrity.
He's not fucking...
He's a superstar.
He's a celebrity. I feel like Carl Sagan was our last great scientist because he had a spiritual component. He understood the spirituality of science, and he was a mystic in many ways. And I feel like, we've sort of lost touch with mysticism. I feel like mysticism is a huge component to, like, a lot of people are very anti-religious. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, it's not the religion that's the problem. It's the fact that we've hollowed mysticism out of religion and just kept these sort of dogmatic shells. Like, I've read a lot of Sufism, which is at the core of Islam, which is quite beautiful. But much like they were destroying ancient relics of the Sufis, that they're sort of hollowing out the religion to make what they want of it. Just like if you look at esoteric Christianity, or you look at Kabbalic wisdom, all these things are amazingly beautiful and super rich with history and understanding of the sort of human experience. But yet we've lobotomized the mysticism from religion. And now we have these just hollow dogmatic shells that we can inject with whatever agenda of whoever the preacher is. And I think that's really disgusting. I feel like we've lost a lot.
Yeah, it brings us back to the original point that we were talking about, the pendulum swing. It's the reason that Carl Sagan was so engaging is that he had both sides. He had the science and he had the mysticism to balance it out. Where now, like you were saying, the mysticism has been taken out, and it's just being treated one side of the spectrum.
Well, you get the dogma. You just literally get the hollowed out dogma of science. And as much as I love science, I think science is actually incredibly detrimental. There's a book by Korzybski called Science and Sanity, which it's an immense book, and it's actually really difficult to read. But it sort of outlines the failures of science from a scientific perspective, which is incredibly interesting. And it's something worth checking out. But yeah, I think science is not. It's like a lot of people are like, whoa, the answer is science. We need to just know science. Forget religion. And it's like, and on both opposite ends of the spectrum, they can be doing the same thing in their own sort of dogmatic sense. So yeah, it's a weird place.
It makes me think of what you were saying earlier too about perspective and how good we've become at manipulating perspective. And That's often when I talk to my friends and I get really stoned, I tell them like, hey, that we can fucking telepathically communicate. We're just not doing it. And we have the ability to do it. We're doing it now with our cell phones. And we've managed to skew our perspective so that we can believe like, okay, yeah, I can talk to someone without saying actual words using this phone.
Totally.
So how hard is it going to be to get to the point in technology where like, hey, we're just going to put something in your skin and you're going to just be able to do it. And people be like, okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, you can sit there and, you can say coffee out loud, or you can say or you can just think coffee and say coffee in your head. That's like literally you're just speaking in the fifth dimension when you're doing that. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's completely breaking the barrier. It's like all we need to figure out is how to connect that. Mm-hmm. It's like we're not just dull voices inside of our heads. We have a million sort of super conscious thoughts every fucking minute. And it's like if we can figure out how to tap into that stuff, we can have fairly limitless potential. But I don't think that has to benefit the power structures that be. So there's a reason why Nikola Tesla died alone in a fucking hotel with a pigeon. There's a reason why fucking Wilhelm Reich, had a court-ordered book burning in the U.S. and was arrested and died in prison. It's like, it's this concept of sort of scientific terrorism that I joke about, where it's like, people that are really trying to do breakthrough stuff will be deemed terrorists.
For sure. And I'm hoping that the way to fix that is happening already, which is we are definitely seeing a lot more people open to, like you were saying, like automatic, like the Las Vegas shooting. There's people that are now questioning things. So they're a little more, as the kids say, woke. Yeah. You know what I mean? But I feel like, totally. the nature of society is becoming a little more woke. You look at shows like Rick and Morty that are super popular, that are testing the barriers of like multiple dimensions and science and all this shit. So I feel that perhaps we're definitely on the right track. We're just going to have to go through some shit.
Yeah, I think through grinding it out, and I think time sort of becomes an asset in that fight, where it's like, over time, like Dick Cheney can't be alive for another 20 years. You know what I mean? Like that's got to be a day where we all celebrate. You know what I mean? Like
it depends on if they perfect the Blood Boys.
Yeah, exactly.
If they perfect the Blood Boy technology,
then he'll have a blood bag for sure. But it's time is one of those things that will sort of, the old guard passes, and there'll always be a new version of the old guard per se. But I do think that the numbers are going to start to grow in terms of limber minds. I feel like there's going to be a strange sort of like Darwinistic sort of separation of critical thinking. And you're already starting to see it in many ways. And it's geographical, too. You can feel it, and that's why there's such a schism between the coast and the middle of the country. And, it's an interesting thing that's happening. And, it's not to claim I have any answers here, but, we're going to sit back and watch.
Yeah, because, it gets increasingly harder to secretly, assassinate a person like one Tesla if the entire fucking population is on that level.
Totally. And it's also getting to the point where it's like it becomes increasingly harder to push an agenda through the mass media when everyone doesn't believe anything anymore. When you basically say it's like you're lied to once, and you sort of, at that point, you can't really get there again. If maybe a few more times, but eventually everyone's going to go, cool, I don't believe anything anyone's saying anymore. So at that point, you build a nation of skeptics, which sounds kind of depressing. But at the same token, I think that, what is a skeptic? It's like a wounded romantic in the first place. So, I think that there will still always be a sort of romantic that at the core of it that will shine through after the sort of skeptic, So, we'll see.
We'll see. That's where we're at, I think. At least in our point, for us both, it's.
That was good, man. I thought we were going to talk about beers. We didn't even get into it, but I'm happy we got.
Let's talk beer.
Yeah, I mean, shit. I love beers. Wish I had a beer right now.
Yeah, this is starting to happen to me a lot lately. Where the show was supposed to be about beer, and it's just become this. I just talk. I want to talk about important things. Beer is important too, though, because beer is when I'm sitting back and watching the world unfold. Beer is what's keeping me company.
Yeah, it's like the Romans said, in vino veritas, and wine there is truth. It's like, there's something beautiful about cracking a beer. And, I'll always say this, I can't trust someone unless they can have a beer with me. It's just like, there's something about it. Like, I feel like I need to be like, hey, let's have a beer. I don't need you to fucking drink 10 beers. Just have a beer. There's something ceremoniously about sitting there, having a beer and talking.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm actually been drinking right now. So
there you
I
go.
mean, I was drinking this entire episode and a beer from Iron Triangle that we did for this event, this wrestling event that we did. This little.
You work at a brewery, or what do you do? How do I get free beer from you?
I work at. Yeah, I work at Iron Triangle Brewing, man, at in downtown LA. If you ever want to swing by,
absolutely, that sounds like a great idea. Yeah, I feel like.
And we've been doing.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's fine. We worked with this Bumps and Bruises company, Get Down LA, that does indie wrestling shows, and they did a show. We made a beer for them, so we're gonna keep doing that.
Sick, man.
That's awesome. We're gonna keep having indie wrestling at the brewery.
We my band is like, it's like, for better or worse, we drink pretty hard, and I feel like not a lot of bands are sort of very hard drinking anymore. But we love our beers, man. We've been drinking like just a lot of super heavy IPAs, Imperial IPAs. There's something about like I don't want to have to drink a lot of beers anymore because I just like get too full and I sort of get burpy or like you don't want to be that way as you're trying to sing. It's like the worst. So the real sort of like high alcohol proof IPAs that you're getting right now are fucking awesome. And it's like just really tough to go back to other beers after you're drinking something with that much flavor and hops. It's like, the best.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, I'm kind of all over the spectrum. So I've been doing this for so long now that like I go up and down. Like I love super aggressive IPAs, but they have their time and place for me. Like if I'm doing a show, if I'm going to perform a show or something, I want something a little lighter just to kind of chug something and keep myself kind of hydrated. Yeah. But I always still tend to go for a crafty, like a craft lager, not like a PBR or some shit.
Yeah.
Like, I really try and stay away from that stuff. Unless it's a scenario where like I'm backstage at a show and that's all they have. I'm like,
totally. Fuck. Yeah. No, I just can't I can't drink a PBR anymore. I did my time with like cheap beers, but at this point, like, at this point in my life, I'm a little bit older. I'm like, if I'm going to do drugs and drink, they need to be good drugs and good alcohol. Like I don't really have I don't have a lot of room for bad drugs and cheap alcohol. They're just,
I spent that is a young man. That's a young man's game. Yeah.
Yeah. You got to make energetic decisions. You get a little older, and you're like, I can't do that. It's like.
Yeah, I find myself getting a little more lame. If according to my friends, like I just, hey man, no, I'm good. I'll just drink water, or I'll try and have a cocktail if they have good booze. But I don't need to rage as hard as you're raging. I'm good.
I do. I've been doing the tequilas lately, though. Like, I feel like tequila is like the sativa of alcohol. So it's like, I'll have like 4 shots of tequila before like on stage or something like that, just to like, it gives me energy. It's something that just like peps me up. It's like, and I feel fine after tequila too. If I don't, it's like, I feel like if I drink cocktails, it's whatever I'm mixing with it that makes me feel like shit too. So if I'm just shooting some
the sugary mixers and shit.
Exactly. So I sort of, kind of simplify it to, I heard like a shot of tequila is only like 65 calories too, not to be the fucking LA guy counting calories, but in terms of like efficiency, because I'll tell you what, man, touring is pretty much it's just like onset alcoholism. It's just so hard to fucking, you're exhausted. You drank the night before you played a show. You got to get on stage again the next night. What do? You're like, let's drink some more so we don't feel like shit. And it just turns into a downward spiral that, by the time I get off tour, I try and detox for 2 weeks, which is like the hardest part of my life. Just fucking sweating, playing video games, being like, oh, I need a drink. But it's like, it's like making energetic decisions. You sort of just, eventually I'm sure we'll all just, if we keep this thing going, be the sober guys like everyone else turns into.
Nah, I don't think I'll ever be sober, man. I mean, I don't see the point. I don't need to be sober, and I don't need to be a complete alcoholic. Yeah. I can have my couple beverages here and there like a fucking adult. Like,
I just know that touring really takes its toll on people in terms of like, the drinking bands, and we're talking about bands that go into their 50s.
Oh yeah.
So few of those guys drink. You know what I mean? It's like it just gets to the point where they're just like, cool, I just can't do it. I'm also just not like a very casual person. I'm not like a casual drinker where it's like I'm either gonna not drink or I'm like let's go like I got one speed, let's fucking cheers
rage up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it's cool to see like Braun from Mastodon. I hung out with him, and he doesn't drink before the show, but then after the show we're gonna sit there and we're gonna sample out some crazy fucking beers.
Yeah.
Like, let's get some interesting stuff in here, like barrel aged this, or a sour beer, or anything interesting.
You know who does drink like a fucking animal and is still the fucking coolest, oldest dude ever? Till Lindemann. That guy fucking goes hard, dude. Like he kept calling me to his dressing room, and he would just look at me and go sips, sips, and point to like let's go. And I'd be like sips, it's sips times a till. We'd go in there, and he'd have his assistant pour like fucking 6 shots of mezcal, and we would just throw down mezcal. Like even before he'd go on to tell me stories about how he's like, I was up till 7 last night. There was a Russian model night at my friend's restaurant. You know, they just have like tons of escorts backstage. Like those guys do it, man. They're the best. They're just like forever the best biggest and best rockers ever. You know.
Hell yeah, dude. I get so mad. Like some of my friends, give them shit. Like, oh, the music's whatever. I'm like, dude, you shut up. Like,
you know, it might be simple. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be technical music. Those guys put on a show. It is a German metal opera with like pyromancy occurring. It's like it's one of the best shows, if not the best show I've ever seen.
Yeah, same here. It's definitely on my either number 1 or number 2 slot. Just crazy fireworks. I mean, I went to this show in Florida, and I told my friends afterwards, I'm like, the singer just sat on a giant dick cannon and came bubbles all over the crowd.
It's a different level of sort of theatrical component. It's opera. It's the only way I can describe it. It's just insane. It's so cool, man. It's awesome.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, and last thing I wanted to bring up, so we talked a little bit about beer and stuff, and we mentioned earlier you like video games. Are you playing anything right now?
I am playing Destiny 2, of course, because that game is fucking excellent, and I can't stop playing it. It's like I got a couple of people that I'm playing with at nighttime, and I look forward to the end of my day very much so, because I play Destiny until about 2 in the morning.
That's what I've been doing as well. Yeah. I'm super tired, man.
Since the game totally. I'm like burning the candle on both ends. I feel like shit. But we should after this exchange screen names, and we should fucking fire team up on some shit.
Hell yeah, man! My girl, my fiance works at Activision, dude.
So
I'm in the clan with all the Activision people, and we raid pretty consistently. They always.
What's your power rating?
I'm at 299. I might have hit 300 already,
Get the fuck out of here! I'm at 279, I think. So.
Well, that's the thing. I have a consistent, like, I can always just be like, hey, I want to do the raid, and somebody's doing it. So I can get you in. I can get you in.
I have not done that raid yet. The Leviathan or whatever.
It's fucking bananas. I love it because it really does make you communicate with your teammates. Like, there's no bullshit. Yeah. Nobody can fuck around. Like you
have to break up into 2 teams when you do that. Because I got into it once, and no one was communicating, and it seemed like people needed to break up into 2 teams because it seems like if you do it like a team of 6 or something like that. I don't know.
It's 4 parts. There's 4 parts to the raid, and each part requires teamwork on levels that I've never seen on any game, dude. Like 2 people, there's one room. They call it the baths. That's the name of it, the baths. And you have a team of 3 on one side and a team of 3 on the other side. And 2 of the guys are standing on a platform, and one guy's floating between them. And like somebody always has to be on the platform so that the chains go up. So you have to kind of communicate, like, hey, I'm coming to you, and you go there and kill the guy and then swap out with and you keep doing this until eventually you all meet in the middle and destroy these lamps or something. But
dude, the game is so good. Bungie did such an amazing job with this game. I feel like I haven't been this excited about the game too. Like when I'm playing, and it's like even in the Crucible, like when I play with a team, and it's you're doing the thing where you guys got to set the charges or defuse the charges. It's like sport.
Oh yeah, it's definitely sporty, man, and it's competitive, and it's like I said, I appreciate that they put in the effort to make it so that you have to communicate with your people. Like this is a true multiplayer experience that it reminds me of when I was a kid and we had 4 or 5 people in the house and we were just taking turns or something shit like that.
Yeah. And just to kind of come full, so video games are like important right now. It's as stupid and as trivial as it says, but it's like there's something that like really getting good at video games. It's like when that singularity approaches, man. You're going to be like, I'm glad I played all those video games. You're just sort of training yourself to just dial in with the machine. It's.
It's like my dad. Like my dad's super into technology, and I asked him one day, and he was just, I want to be on point when the shit happens. I got to know what's happening. Yeah. A lot of older generations don't even think about it. Like there's people, they don't know how to work a phone, or they don't even know what GPS
and that's the thing too. Like video games have gotten increasingly so much more complicated that it was weird because I took a break from gaming for a while too. And it's funny because I ended up buying a PlayStation after the Tool tour because I ended up having to sell my other one because it was so fucking broke. But like after that, I don't know. There's something about it that like I just got so fucking heavy into the gaming and like devoting my time to just sort of understanding and fucking like completing games and stuff like that. It's tough, man. They challenge your brain. They create a lot of them have a lot of like lateral thinking involved in them too. You know, like problem solving games and stuff like that. I love it, man. It's great.
For sure, yeah. There's a lot of mental acrobatics and
Yes,
hand-eye coordination that goes with it too, which is super important.
I also think in general, it's like, here you have, the video game industry is like kicking the shit out of the movie industry. They're stealing writers. There's more money involved in it. There's like all the talent is going to video games because there's more creativity and there's more money right now. So it's like, it's an exciting time. Dude, there's like marquee level like Hollywood acting in video games now where you're like, dude, like you're like, I know that voice, that's so-and-so. And then like use his facial animation. And it's like, it's really, really a cool time. I beat the new Uncharted update that they had like a new Uncharted Lost Legacy. It's like you play as these like two girls. Like it's like an 11-hour playthrough. It's pretty quick. But man, that game is like so well done in terms of playing a movie. It's really cool. It's definitely worth checking out. And the graphics are fucking insane because I feel like whenever Sony puts a game out, it's like they like unlock some like fucking optimized fucking graphics card within that thing.
Yeah, and Naughty Dog does a great job with that. Like, the Uncharted games, all of them are like a movie. Like, you could just sit like, I like them because I could play them and my girl can sit there and watch me play it and not be bored.
Exactly. Totally.
Yeah, and like Last of Us too. Last of Us was fucking, dude, I cried.
Dude, I think that was like the first video game to make people cry.
I cried. I wasn't expecting that at all. Within the first 5 minutes, I'm in tears. I'm like, what the shit?
Yeah. That game was set the bar for like that level of experience, and it was like out the gates too. Like when I got my PlayStation, it came with. I was just like, "Holy shit, dude!"
Yeah. That game and the Walking Dead game that they made, the Telltale game where you make choices and they're like the worst possible choices you can make. It's like, hey, which person dies? This defenseless child or an old man? Like, why?
Totally. It's fucked up.
That game is so fucked up, and then I don't know, man. It made me not feel good, which is fine. I like that. I like that they made me not feel good.
Yeah, it's experiential. It's like it got something out of you,
Exactly. Well, yeah, man, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for taking time to talk for a bit. I feel like you and I have a lot of things in common. Wrestling.
Yeah, man, it was great chatting. We should definitely stay in touch. We'll fucking start with the gaming,
For sure. And
then we'll stop by the brewery and we'll steal a bunch of beer.
Hell yeah, I'll give you a bunch of free beer. Don't worry about that.
I love it.
All right, man. Thanks again. Shout out to the band, Instagram plugs and all that stuff if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, just the number 3 and then teeth, all one word. Just Google it and discover what you will.
Exactly. I hope you guys enjoy it, and thanks again, brother.
All right,
Cheers.
dude. Take care, man. Peace.
The major cause of insanity is restriction of the use of the brain and the mind. The major cause of insanity is restriction of the use of the brain and the mind.